There's been some movement in the grain markets this week, and here to explain what's going on is Kim Anderson, our grain marketing specialist. Now, Kim, I think it's fair to say this has been a fairly nervous week for the market. Can you kind of take us through what's been happening?
Well, I think the trade is looking at yields and how the harvest is coming in. Even though it's a new harvest, I think they're a little disappointed, and there's some information around the world. You know, you can go back 3 or 4 weeks, and we were talking about that Kansas City Board of Trade July contract price. We said if it went through 660, broke down, that the next target was 637. If it broke 637, then the next target was about 6. We finally turned our way through that 660, went down to 637 pretty fast, turned our way through it, and we've been down around the 610, 605 range, somewhere in there. And then all of a sudden this week we popped back up in just a couple of days back up through the resistance at 637 and back up challenging that 660.
All right, so let's talk about some of what's behind that, what's really driving that. You've been around the state this week doing some grain grading schools. What are you hearing from the elevators? What are you seeing from this crop?
Well, I'm an economist and not an agronomist, so I've just been listening, but the underlying tone, I think, is that yields aren't going to be as high as they earlier expected. Talk about heads having nothing in them to heads having half full of wheat, that they've got some big, beautiful heads out there, but they're just a certain percentage of them that do not have kernels, or they are not full of kernels. And they're talking a little bit about some shriveled kernels. So I think the trade's getting nervous that we're not going to have as much production in Oklahoma and around the U.S., that our U.S. wheat crop's just not going to be as high as we earlier expected, or maybe even what USDA projected.
All right, now we've also been seeing some reports of some things going on in the world. For instance, Russia's a little bit dry, could affect their crop. What's going on there?
Well, again, you're talking about the drought there. The Ukraine, you were already talking about 40 to 50% of last year's crop in the Ukraine. Russia had problems getting it in. Dry conditions now lowering those yields. So lower world production, I think, is having an impact on it. And if you look at the stocks-to-use ratios in the U.S., we're below average on the stocks-to-use ratio, and the world is right at average.
All right, Kim, so taking all that into account, where are prices going to go?
Well, that's anybody's guess, especially with this week's move. I think the market's going to slow down, evaluate what's going on. There's going to be volatility. I really think that we're going to have higher prices as we get out in the November, December time period, especially if there's a problem with Argentina or Australia.
All right, good information as always. Kim Anderson, our grain marketing specialist.